Hey, this is Jim Edwards, and today we're going to talk about 5 steps to getting anything you want. And, it's interesting. I taught this for the first time, I think 10 or 11 years ago, and I had a whole complete program about this. And the big thing that this sequence does is it really helps you to be able to actually get what you want and understand the process of why you get what you want. And also understand the process of why you get the things that you don't want, because the formula works for both things. So quick overview, basically the 5 steps boil down to knowing what you want, believing you can have it, having faith that it's on its way to you, knowing exactly why you want it, and also taking massive action. So today we're going to talk about step 1. What do you want? And it's interesting, after having coached hundreds and thousands of people over the years, if you ask somebody, what exactly do you want? That's actually one of the hardest questions that they can ever answer, because it requires commitment. And the problem is that if you don't know exactly what you want, then you're just going to get anything. So you've got to understand exactly what it is that you want. And there are some things that you can do to understand whether or not you really defined a good want or not, or a good what. And the first thing is you got to get really, really clear. One of the things, you've probably heard this before. People will say, okay, what do you want? Well, I want more money. I want a better relationship. I want a better body. I want all these things, but they're vague. And so the first thing you got to do is get really, really clear on what it is that you want. You got to have a specific amount of money that you want to achieve, for example. So you might say, okay, I want $1 million. Well, that's kind of tough. If you've never gotten $1 million before, it's hard for you to actually get $1 million. So what you need to do is also think of it in terms of, is this realistic for me? And that's one of those things where you get these people that are all woo-woo that'll say, well, you don't want to put restrictions on yourself because then you're just holding yourself back in the universe. And that's pretty much bullshit. Because if you've never made $1 million before, then you're probably not going to make $1 million as your very first thing that you're going to go after. So you want something that'll cause you to really stretch, but you want something that your mind can actually believe. But we'll get to that in the next step. So it's got to be really clear. And it's got to be very, very concrete, which means that you know exactly what it is. One of the things, and again, we'll talk about actions in a future one, because that's actually the 5th step. But you got to know the target that you're aiming for. And so it's concrete, it's clear, it's written down. You know exactly what it is. And it's whether, you say a better relationship. Well, then maybe instead of saying a better relationship, you say, okay, my spouse and I spend time together every night. We spend at least an hour together, non-TV time, just talking and communicating about our days. And sitting in front of the television doesn't count. I want $100,000 in my bank as soon as possible. And we'll talk about timing as well later. The other thing is, it can't be just it'd be nice to have. It's got to be a must have. And the difference between a must have and a nice to have is really up to you to decide whether or not you've reached that point. For me, I can tell you a story about when I lost 60 pounds and got in probably the best shape of my life. Came from a position where I was in the shittiest shape of my life, and I weighed 260 pounds. I could barely walk to the mailbox. I was getting sick every month or two. I was getting extremely sick, and I finally just had enough, and I had to have it. And so I had to lose the weight, and I decided that I was going to lose 60 pounds. But instead of that being the goal, I actually set a different goal. And that goal was to walk every morning for 30 minutes. That's how I was able to actually lose that weight. But it became a must-have. It wasn't just a nice-to-have, gee, it would be nice to lose that weight. I had to do it. I started visualizing myself at the lighter weight. And so now I've taken that weight off, and I've kept that weight off for 3 years. The other thing is you got to write it down. And when I say write it down, people say, well, I write down goals all the time, Jim. I've written down my goals for my finances. I've written down my goals for my spirituality, for my body, for all this different stuff. And most of the time you write it down once and you never look at it again. And a lot of times you write down so much stuff that it seems overwhelming, and there's no way anybody's going to be able to achieve all this big laundry list of things that you've written down. So what I encourage you to do is to have one goal at a time. And that kind of flies in the face of a bunch of stuff. But I like to think of them as really, I call them log jam goals. And if you think about, if you ever watched the National Geographic Channel, or you've seen the way they used to do logging, they'd cut the logs off on the hillside, they'd roll them down into the river, and then they'd float them down to the sawmill. Well, every once in a while, there would be a log jam, and they'd get all stopped up in the river. And usually there was a single log that if they could move that one log, all the logs would go. And so that's kind of what losing weight became for me, was I knew that if I could lose the weight, and if I would exercise every morning for 30 minutes, just going for a walk, just walk as far as I could in 30 minutes, my energy would increase, my self-esteem would increase, and all these things would come along with taking that action every morning. So you got to write it down, and then you got to visualize your goal 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. And when I say visualize it, I don't mean in the sense of, you read it and then you close your eyes and you're like, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. What you want to do is you want to visualize it to the point where you feel it. And I call that being like a power vision movie, is what I've called it in the past, where literally you take that and you read it, and then you close your eyes and you feel it coming into existence. And that's why it's important that you basically have one goal at a time, because it's too hard to envision a whole bunch of goals all at once. You can, but it's easier just to visualize one goal at a time. And feel it. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? Make it really big in front of your mind's eye, and then pull it in front of you and really make it big and bright. And you just practice that over and over and over again. So next time, what we're going to do is we're going to go over step 2, which is to believe that you can achieve what it is that you've set out. So you know exactly what the what is. Next, we got to work on that belief. So your assignment for today, if you choose to do it, would be to write down what it is you want. Take 5 minutes and decide. Make that single goal that will bring all that other stuff along with you. And then next time, tomorrow, we're going to go over step 2, belief. All I ask is just follow me at Real Jim Edwards on Twitter, so that you can take advantage and see me on these periscopes. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye, everybody.